I'm glad to hear you not deny that this is a Harris County bill, because my first question I was going to ask you is how did you get to the population of 2.7? But in your opening, I heard you distinguish that this is a Harris County bill, correct?
Correct.
And you have a small part of Harris County, kind of probably down south, probably near the Lake Jackson, Lake Houston area. Is that correct?
Well, it's southeast. It starts in Baytown and runs to Clear Lake, the southeast corner, kind of a comma there.
Okay. And Senator, so this is a bill that you're not trying to take statewide. You just want it to be Harris County only.
It's
not
addressing
Galveston County, where your main base is. Just Harris County only, is that correct?
It's addressing a very specific problem. You know, we had 253 counties that had no issues really with ballot paper. We had one that did. So we just want to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And this is just an important accountability tool. I hope it doesn't happen again. But I think this bill will help make sure that it doesn't happen again.
And that's what this bill's for. And let me ask you, Senator Middleton, you said Baytown, part of down south. Is Lake Houston, is that part of your area of Harris County?
Clear Lake, northern Clear Lake, yeah.
Lake Houston, down that area?
Not Lake Houston.
So Lake Houston is outside of inside, or?
That's in Senator Betancourt's, I believe, and Senator Creighton's.
Okay. And were you aware of some of the inaccuracies that took place down south in South Houston?
Yes, I had a number of constituents that worked the polls and said that they made multiple calls for more ballot paper, never heard a response, saw a bunch of voters at the polling location that I mentioned, that it had been an influx from areas that had run out of paper. It was a big issue.
Were you aware that some of the Republican presiding judges down in South Houston, kind of down in Clear Lake area, Lake Houston Church of Christ, wrote in a declaration that the location ran out of paper and turned away approximately 150 voters, but the actual data showed the location steadily checked in voters throughout the day until around 8 p.m. without any gaps? Were you aware of that?
There's a lot about this election that's being hidden from us. I do know that open records requests are being denied right now by the Harris County election administrators. They're fighting against that. So I think that there seems to be some sort of, I guess, plan or purpose to deny what the information that we need to know what really happened. What we do know is that up to 16% of polling locations were short on paper. Now that, of course, doesn't mean that they ran out in all 16% of those, but we should never be in a situation where election judges and poll workers are concerned they're going to run out of paper despite multiple requests to get more. We didn't see that around the state. It's wrong that that's happened. We just need to make sure that we set a policy, make sure it doesn't happen again, because when you run out of paper, people can't vote. It's pretty simple.
Senator Middleton, I'm not going to argue with you and discuss with you or dispute that Harris County didn't have any problems. We did. Okay, I will openly admit that we had problems in this last election cycle in Harris County, as I've done with Senator Betancourt in the past. But some of the numbers that are being thrown around, Senator Middleton, are more the conspiracy. You said 16 voting locations, and I'm reporting, I just simply asked you, were you aware of a Republican presiding judge that said, yeah, they lost paper, but they never went down. And the facts show that from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., they had a steady flow of voters in that location, which is actually South Houston. I just asked you, were you aware of that? Because some of these numbers are more conspiracy than fact.
We have a lot of conflicting reports on this at this point. It would really help if the Harris County Election Administrator's Office would reveal to us all the information that they have.
And I'm not going to argue with you on that, okay? We're going to agree on that one. Senator Middleton, Senate Bill 1993 states that the Secretary of State, who is a near and dear friend of mine and a former colleague, can order new elections if it has good cause to believe. And that's how the bill is written, correct? Good cause to believe. Am I quoting you in the bill? Because that's what I have here.
And that is the same language that we passed in a different Senate bill this session already off this floor.
Good cause to believe that at least 2% of the total number of polling places did not get supplemental ballots for 1 or more hour. Senator Middleton, can I ask you, what constitutes good cause?
I think the elements of this bill are very clear, and they speak for themselves, where you make the request for more ballot paper, you don't receive more ballot paper, and you, in fact, run out of ballot paper. I think those are very easy to prove, simple elements of this bill, and that's what's the cause to believe right there.
Does it come from does good cause come from any other official complaint, or maybe a Republican lawsuit, or is it a result of some official investigation? Because I'm really trying to get so that everybody on the floor, before they take a vote, can get a clear understanding of good cause. Because my Secretary of State is a very knowledgeable individual. I just want her to be able to clearly be able to have something to act on, because what you're asking here is a major task, to redo a complete election in one particular county, and you're going to base all that on a term saying good cause. Where is that coming from, and how do you define good cause? I think that's it's a very straightforward, simple question. Don't you agree?
Right. That was in Senate Bill 823, I believe, is what we passed off this floor, where that was mirrored. But look, at the end of the day, these are two very simple elements.
So wait a minute. So I just want to get clarification. That came from another bill that we saw this session?
It's very similar language, yes.
What was that
I was just pointing out the fact
What was that bill number?
I believe it was Senate Bill 823. I believe it's Senate Bill 823.
And who was the author of the bill?
I believe that's Senator Betancourt.
Senator
was the author of
Betancourt.
that bill.
So this is a terminology that you got from Senator Betancourt. Is that right? I'm just trying to understand what we're doing here.
Well, the most important parts of this bill are the two elements, and they are very simple to determine. You make the request for more ballot paper, you don't get it, and you actually run out. I mean, that's really all there is to this.
And I understand where you're going, Senator Middleton, but I'm just trying to get to the definition of good cause before I can move on, so that all of our constituents can have a clear understanding on what it is that we're voting on. So what you're telling me is we're voting on a terminology that was presented by Senator Betancourt on another election bill. Is that correct?
We're voting on this bill. So we're voting on Senate Bill 1993. We've already voted on that bill. We can't vote on two bills at one time.
I agree. But the crust of this bill is the terminology good cause. What triggers this bill, what triggers your bill, SB 1993, correct me if I'm wrong, what triggers this bill is that the Secretary of State can order a new election if it has good cause to believe. And that is a terminology, if I'm hearing you correctly, that we've adopted from Senator Betancourt in his prior bill. Is that a correct statement? That
term was in a different bill, and that was passed on this floor, yes. Yeah.
So there is no formal definition, or there's nothing official about this term, good cause, except for it came from the mouth of Senator Betancourt.
2020.
Is that right?
I'm sorry, I missed that last question there.
The only official thing about this term, good cause, is that it was birthed from the mouth of Senator Betancourt on one of his bills.
No, this is a different bill. That's why these elements that I'm discussing are so important, because you don't have good cause to believe if you receive more ballot paper or you don't run out. I mean, that's what good cause is about in this bill. It's very easy to prove. So
let me ask you something, and then I'll move on. This will be my last question on good cause, okay? Has the bill that Senator Betancourt written that has the terminology good cause, has that bill passed the Senate yet?
That's HB 2020 by Representative Oliver. Dr. Oliverson. I'm sorry.
You're throwing me curveball, Senator Middleton.
No.
Which bill is it?
HB 2020 and SB.
HB 2020. Okay, so it's not Senator Betancourt's bill.
He is the sponsor.
All right, let's come back to that, because my staff's going to do some background on that. So generally, correct me if I'm wrong, the Secretary of State lacks the authority to order an election. She doesn't have that authority right now, does she? the Secretary of State? Does she have the authority to?
This would be new. Yes, that's correct. This would be new. This would be new.
So
this would be new.
You're giving her the power to the Secretary of State, the same authority as a district court is establishing procedure for a new election. So we're going to enhance the Secretary of State's power. Is that correct, under this bill?
You know what? I don't think that it would, because I expect that everyone should have ballot paper in the next election, and then this would have no effect at all. I sure hope that's the case, that everyone has ballot paper that needs it, every polling location has sufficient ballot paper, and that we never have this issue again. I really sincerely hope that's the case.
I get that. We've had some major problems, and I've admitted that, and I'm not going to debate that with you. But the question I just asked, and you answered, is does she have the power already? You said no. And I just came back and asked, so we're going to give her that power. We're going to enhance her power. Secretary of State, we're going to enhance their power, right? Under this bill. Is that correct?
This would be new. That's correct.
Because you said you didn't. That person didn't have. The Secretary of State didn't have that authority now, right?
Right.
But we're going to give it to them under the Senate Bill 1993. That's correct.
That's right.
Okay, and that's the same power that right now, the only person that has that authority is a district court. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right, and that's why we mirror the section 231007 to match that.
Okay, all right. So will the Secretary of State have concurrent power with the court, or will they have sole authority to order a new election? So will they both have the power, or will it just be the Secretary of State now?
It would be both, so you could choose either. Yeah, you could choose either, but this, like I said earlier, would be new. It would be new.
But the Secretary of State will only be in reference to a shortage of 2% of paper. Is that right?
Only if there's a 2% of precincts and polling locations
that don't have paper. And for the lack of paper, we're going to give the Secretary of State authority to rerun a whole election in any county for which it happens in. Is that correct?
Well, it's not any county. This is only Harris County.
Oh, only Harris County. I forgot about that. That's right. It's only Harris County. So if it happens down in Montgomery County, if they run out of paper there, or if it happens in Galveston County, if they run out of paper there, this bill won't apply.
If that happens in those counties, I assure you we'll be back here.
We'll be back here.
We will be back here looking at that and making sure that it doesn't happen anywhere else. But right now, look, only one out of 254 got it wrong. Only one.
That doesn't seem kind of biased to you?
It's the facts. Only one got it wrong.
Only one got it wrong. But what's to say what's going to happen? We don't know what can happen in the future, though, do we?
We don't.
So instead of making it statewide right now, we're just going to pick on my county, little old Harris County, right? Kind of like all the other election bills that's come through here.
I don't think we're picking on anyone, because this is such a basic thing. If you don't have ballot paper, you can't vote. And the whole penal code is set up this exact same way. It's based on past behavior. Our entire penal code, if everyone did the right thing all of the time, I don't think we'd have a very long penal code.
I see that as kind of being biased, and, you know, you and possibly your party picking on Harris County, which is taking place in this chamber a lot during this 88th legislative session. But let's move on. Senator Middleton, is the Secretary of State going to be required to determine if the shortage of paper occurred intentionally or was it an honest mistake? So is that determination going to be made as well?
That is up to the Secretary of State, and of course it still requires that second element that they ran out. It's not just that they ordered more, but that they ran out.
And if she determines that it was done intentionally, does this bill come with a guarantee of due process and allow for Harris County to appeal the decision in any way? You don't have an appeal process in this bill, do you?
Well, they would always have that input to demonstrate the fact that they did not run out after more had been requested.
But I didn't see an appeal process in this bill. There's not one, right?
No, these are two very simple elements here.
No, there's no appeal process in your bill. Will this be a hearing, or is this going to be a unilateral decision, or is this going to be, dictated or mandated, or just, how's this going? What's the process here? Because the bill doesn't speak to it. It just says there's going to be a new election.
It would be up to the Secretary of State to decide, assuming that they have not pursued the route in district court as well, or only in district court.
So when you say they're going to be concurrent powers, and it's just going to be up to the Secretary of State, what happens if the district court disagrees with the Secretary of State?
Well, the district court's going to need to follow state law.
But you understand where I'm going with this. So
which would be mandamus,
if
right?
the other person who has the power, being the district court, disagree with the Secretary of State, Senator Zaffirini, what then happens?
That's what I was talking about a second ago with mandamus. So in other words, if a district court chooses to not follow state law, you seek a remedy to force the court to follow state law to a higher court, appellate court, Supreme Court.
So is the Secretary of State going to have more power than the district court?
In this case, no, because you always have a remedy in the court system.
So is the district court going to have more power than the Secretary?
It depends on which remedy you seek in the election. So that I think that's very important.
Explain that to me, please.
So
I'm a little slow. I wrote the small bust. Explain that to me.
So you could bring a lawsuit, but the reason why that's not an adequate remedy, and I think we need the bill, is the speed at which that occurs. There is a lot of litigation right now in Harris County, and there are election challenges still ongoing. And here we are in April. We're done with session in less than 30 days. So speed matters. And when people are denied the vote, you have to have that speed in order to provide them an adequate remedy. And that's why I think this is so necessary for the Secretary of State in order to act very quickly to allow that remedy if ballot paper is denied. So the speed at which you gain relief matters a lot. It matters a lot.
Speed at which you gain relief matters or not. That's your answer to my question, what happens if the district court disagrees with the Secretary of State? That's your answer?
Well, if the district court is not following state law, it's going to go up to the Supreme Court. I mean, that's pretty simple. So, that does happen, and you can't prevent
I'm not quite sure. And as I stay on this floor all the time, I'm not quite sure how that works because I'm not a lawyer. But if the Secretary of State disagrees with the district court, or the district court disagrees with the Secretary of State, you're saying whoever gets to file the complaint the fastest, they win?
This is about the remedy.
What about
this
law?
Is about the remedy right here and the speed at which the voters can have a remedy, because we had problems. They didn't have ballot paper. They didn't get to vote. People got out of line. We don't know how many that is that left and went home and never cast their ballot. And we may never know the exact number, but it was a lot, and it wasn't right, and we need to make sure that never happens again.
Senator Middleton, don't you agree with me? I hope that you would agree with me that in all elections and all type of voting issues, there's always problems?
Nothing is ever perfect. That's absolutely.
I'm glad you said that, Senator. Galveston County is not perfect, are they? Y'all don't do things right always right in Galveston County, do you?
Sorry, I didn't get we didn't run out of paper, and I'll tell you why. I talked to the Sheriff's Department, and our Sheriff Henry Troshaset would escort the ballot paper with the Sheriff's deputy to make sure that it got there quickly and on time before they ran out of paper. So that's how it was handled in Galveston County. It was really no problem at all, and I would hope maybe we could see that happen next time in Harris County, where they escort the ballot paper to make sure that it gets there as quickly as possible.
But you agree with me that in every election something goes wrong somewhere when it comes to elections?
Not always perfect. It's not always perfect.
No, it's never perfect, right? And you think this is the right answer and solution for the alleged...
I think this is a solution...
For the alleged paper shortage to rerun the entire election over again?
I think it's a solution to a very prescribed problem, a very unique problem, as we saw with 254 counties. And it's really insurance at the end of the day to make sure it just doesn't happen again. It's a very, very narrow remedy for a very narrow set of facts.
Very narrow set of facts. And you think this is a very wide solution for a very narrow set of facts. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. But yet, in your own home-based county, the Department of Justice is in your home-based county. Is that correct?
That's regarding redistricting. It has nothing to do with ballot paper in the November general election.
You're right. It's to do with redistricting. But yet we're here in session, and I hadn't seen you author one bill to try to fix the problem.
This is not that bill.
No. Have you
already
authored
passed
any bill
the
to fix the
redistricting
problem
bill?
That y'all have discriminated in Galveston County against black and Hispanic voters under Section 2 Voting Rights Act? So bad to the point that the Department of Justice is in Galveston County? Are you doing anything to fix the problems in your own county?
That is working its way through the court system, and that is not this bill.
But you're not doing anything here to help it, are you?
We didn't run out of ballot paper. I mean, if we had in Galveston County, I would put them in the bill.
You're discussing ballot paper, and we're just talking people who've been isolated and written out of the whole voting process in your county. And you're here to discuss ballot paper in Harris County and make it simple for Harris County. Senator, let me move on because I think everybody understands what's going on here. Senate Bill 1993 requires that the county bear the expense of reissuing another election. Is that correct?
It's whoever paid for the election.
The county.
That I knew, which is the county in the general, yes, yeah.
So if the county is responsible for paying for something that the Secretary of State says is deemed and needed, Senator, I know this is your first session, and this is just, I've only been here 16 years. I kind of view this as an unfunded mandate. Are you requiring Harris County to artificially increase their election budget every year as to ensure that for being required to hold a duplicate election if the Secretary of State says we have to? Who's going to pay for it?
There's only going to have to be another election if they run out of paper, and I'm hopeful that never happens again. The only cost is that you deliver enough paper as is required. Right now, we know under 51008, you've got to supply enough ballot paper, and there's no reason that should happen again. It's a really simple thing. You just deliver enough paper. You don't do things like short the paper as less, like 52 voting centers receive less paper in 2022 than were cast in 2018.
Senator,
you don't do that.
You're not getting any argument out of me on that issue. You're not. I'm not here to argue that. Okay? I'm here to say that there's a lot of conspiracy circled around that. I'm here to say that even Republican precinct judges down in your area said that, yes, they ran out of paper, but they never stopped letting people vote. That's fact. I'm also here to say that you've got a bill that's directly targeting Harris County, and you've got problems in your own damn district in Galveston, major problems that are illegal, that are isolating minority voters from voting. But yet you want to come to Harris County on a conspiracy and demand that, because if we get 2% less paper, you want our county to pay for a whole nother voting cycle. That's what you're doing here today. And that's why I'm voting against your bill, Senator. I appreciate your time. Hope y'all get things straightened out in Galveston. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Miles, and I appreciate you visiting with me before. I know we reserve the right to disagree on this. We do, but I just think that we need to make sure that we have enough ballot paper at all our polling locations.
Senator